Like, personally, I don't really have too much of a problem fighting QUICKSTEP. Problem with QUICKSTEP, just like in Dark Souls 3, is when you add latency to it. On low lat, it's not that big of a deal, but it's not to say that the game would not be better without it, for sure. Bloodhound Step is another problem, though, because Bloodhound Step just carries you so far away that you kind of can get away from roll catches just by distance itself. And same thing with like the light load. When you add light load, it's you know, it increases that thing even further. So, and Raptors, like Raptors has a ton of iframes too. So, you know, I don't know what's their obsession with dodge and iframes and different ways to dodge, where they should really focus on tuning the game around the one dodge that actually is the most balanced, which is medium roll. I think they should just, like, you know, keep medium roll, give it like a more of like a universal purpose, and just leave the dodging for that, and then build the game around that. I mean, the game is already, like I say, that the game is already built around that. Like, all the bosses, all the enemies, they're not built around you light rolling and getting completely away from danger with one dodge. Same thing with BHS and all that stuff. Like, the game is designed around medium roll, so would not really change anything there. It's just that the possibility that they give other players to use the other stuff might on the surface seem like a good thing, because you give player quote-unquote freedom. It's just that that freedom is misplaced in the grand scheme of things, because you're giving players a back door to not play your game while they're not even aware of it. So that's my main issues with these dodge Ash of War. Now, we've talked about it plenty of times. You know, there's different ways to fix it. You know, obviously they're not going to remove it. How I would fix it now, personally, I would reduce the distance for a lot of these dodge, and then reduce the recovery, or increase the recovery, I mean, after you do a dodge, so that you can't like blend up an attack afterward and then dodge right after. So like when like I do this, I should not be able to cancel my my recovery by doing a dodge Ash of War. Well, yeah, I mean, we've talked about this plenty of time. Like, you guys know how I feel about all of that already. I hate these caves, man. It's so dark. Oh, well, the boss. Remember when people said they couldn't nerf BHS because it was needed to dodge the boss? I mean, I'm not surprised. Like, the majority of the players don't even understand what this game... Like, they don't understand the gameplay principles that this game has. They just enjoy it because their monkey brain sort of gets an idea that this combat is better than the next game they've played, but they don't really understand why. So, like, I would not really take anything that's, like, talked about in Reddit, like, too seriously for this game. We've seen that movie before. Oh, wait, with this. It's a bull goat. Okay, since it's Wave of Piss, bull goat. Do that. Let's do that. Do that. Again. Okay, I forgot what my swap is. I know which way I would do it. What a game. What a game. What a game, what a game, what a game. Reddit is the armpit of the internet, and 4chan is the booty hole. You know what? That's a good spell for this spot. It's okay. Why do you do Albert in main hand and S-Stock in offhand in this game? Not the other way around. I tried the other way around before when... Thrusting Sword got the crouch nerf, and I thought it was actually quite good. Because the crouch attack for Thrusting Sword then was like unreactable, so it gave like a very, very nice mix-up. With that said, it wasn't great against all matchups because you kind of miss the forward momentum that the halberd running attack gives you. Like either way, like the running attack or the running R2 for the Thrusting Sword just does not really feel the same. Like it has a different feel to it. So when you have the Thrusting Sword in the main hand, well, now it would not be good because they slowed down the crouch attack, so there would not be much of a reason to do it. But back then, even then, you were missing the halberd running. And I mean, the often Thrusting Sword can backswing. Like your second swing on any latency that's decent is going to guaranteed roll catch. So it's a pretty good option, has good range. You take Black Flame Protection and Sacred Blade are necessary to make Zwei viable. I don't think, honestly, I think strength builds are a thing of the past, man. I think Fate builds, like unless they change things, Fate builds are so much superior than physical builds, really. They just have access to more, and the worst part is, you know, you still do better damage with your sacred weapons than your physical weapons, so you know, and you have access to those buffs that completely nullify damage type. So all in all, like, Fate builds are actually quite superior to physical builds. The only thing that physical builds have a legitimate advantage of having is in latency fight. You get a lot of option with physical build to like rod bundle your weapons, where you don't have that option on elemental build. You can still do it, but you're going to be doing a lot less damage. But like personally, like even then, like even on a build like this, even if it does poor damage, I still have, you know, the poison weapons. It's just that it's going to perform a lot better on physical, like damage wise, of course, or on arcane. Right, it's always arcane. I'm always a bit reluctant with arcane because arcane builds are one of those where, like, when you're fighting in pub match and randoms, like, if they're higher level than you, their arcane build is so much stronger than your arcane build. So it's one of those things, whereas if you have like a Fate build, you're gonna hit every breakpoint, and there's not gonna be like as much of a difference with someone higher level. Too close. Just a stupid attack, yeah, getting the attack back. This guy's name is Skyrim Killer. What did you say, Steel, about the player base coming from Skyrim? Arcane is a build that's really good versus people who are underprepared, but it sucks because of how easy you can counterpick. I don't know, honestly. I've not really played too much with Arcane. I know it was not true before, you know, before they patch a bunch of things, like Bleed was cracked, but I don't know about now much. I don't play with Bleed builds that much. If people run high robustness, you have a bad damage physical build. Well, the thing with Arcane, though, you still have poison. Have some good poison. Like, you can always switch up between poison and bleed. Like, I always felt like the whole point of running an Arcane build was to actually poison your opponent first before anything else. I thought that was the whole point. And to have your build with, like, the mushroom head and even the talisman, and get your damage from there, because it's really easy to poison someone in this game, especially if you're on Arcane, and then you get that quick 20% damage boost, and then you switch afterward. For Bleed, you can either like keep the pressure, or, you know, or be more reactive but keep some good spacing. I don't know, like I said, like Sleep Bird, yeah, obviously there's Sleep Halberd is a Sleep Halberd is a glitch, let's be honest. Sleep Halberd is like, you know, it's one of those things where the developers didn't really know what they were doing. And it's like an accident, just like Murky, like, you know, the stun with Murky. Like Sleep Halberd, the build up for that, it's just like the stun with Murky. It's clearly an accident, was not intended. That's how I see it. Not to say that I care, quite honestly, but that's how I see it. Actually, let's do that. Okay, great fight. Okay, let's... I was about to say, let's beat you with a halberd, but... The one-shot madness. I remember the Madness Infinite. You remember that, guys? Like, you would get hit by the laser, the Madness laser, and the build-up was so great, and it would always ghost hit. And then it would put you into a loop where you just get madness over and over again. God, I remember that. That was so bad. I'm actually planning on doing Armored Core Verdict Day playthrough. I'm planning on doing a Skyrim playthrough. And I'm also planning to do an Elden Ring playthrough, an actual PvE playthrough. So I'm planning to do a bunch of playthrough. Curious to know which other game I would rather be playing than this. To be honest, there's not that many games that I'm interested in. I think it's fair to say that Elden Ring is one of the only good games, like recent good games out there. At least for my personal taste. So, I mean, there's not that much to be playing. With that being said, the recent breakthrough with the Xenia emulator definitely opens up the possibilities for Armored Core games. So I'm definitely looking forward to beating Verdict Day as well. And aside from that, I'm really having a good time. Like, Skyrim has always been that game that I come back to when I'm bored of other games, because it always has some new mods to keep it fresh and keep the game interesting and beautiful and all that stuff. I think it was Chirico earlier who told me that Elden Ring on SteamDB had, like, what was it, 26 or 21k people? I forgot. 26k people maybe? Might get fogwalled. On SteamDB, like, the Elden Ring activity is super low right now. Obviously, we go by SteamDB because it's the only hard number we have, but honestly, I think the PC SteamDB chart is probably the best indication we have of activity, really. 26k? Okay, there you go. Oh, see, 26k is really low, man. Like, consider this. Dark Souls 3 throughout its entire life cycle never really dipped much under, like, 15k. And that's like, we're talking about like 4 years, 5 years, 6 years down the line. And for the most part, it hovered around 20k. So you're looking at a game with Elden Ring that is pretty much on par. That is pretty much on par with Dark Souls 3 numbers at the moment. For something that sold like ridiculously more. Good. You really did it. Insane pivot. It's 20,000 in game. Oh shit. Well, there you go. Damn. That's crazy. Like 20,000 for a game that had a peak at around what was it? All like just under 1 million. Like, I think it was over 900,000 when the game launched. Massive launch. Like, of course, most of these people are casual, but just goes to show that the core player base for Elden Ring is really not that large. You know, it's not, I say it's not that large. It's not larger than predecessors, surprisingly, despite the amount of newcomers, so... I don't know, I'm not really, it will drop to 15k. If it has Dark Souls 3 numbers, that will be a shame and a true testament to what we predicted, that the PvP would die down. And it's crazy, like, no one would have predicted that, because Elden Ring is just so damn popular and sold so damn much. Like, who would have thought that it would drop like that? Hardly any player retention. Yeah, it's just, I think there's a lack of activity. Like, I've watched like some of Steel's content about the recent mods that have been coming out. Like, From Software needs to get on with these things. Like, these mods are just like way better than the base game. Like seamless co-op, you know, all these different modes. It's not like, you know, as much as I respect the hard work that's put into these mods, it's not the hardest thing to make for a studio especially. So like, as far as like an excuse to do it, like, yeah, they're working on other projects, but I mean, if they care that much about Elden Ring and they care enough to release a DLC 2 years down the line, I mean, you know, maybe you'd get like one artist to work on that. I think you're gonna be dead in one shot. Oof. Maybe jump. I cannot believe you only got hit by one. All right, buddy. Most people beat this game through treating and brute force. Of course, nobody would want to play a game that they never appreciated in the first place. Well, I mean, a lot of people would say they liked it, though. That's the thing. Like, I think, like, Elden Ring is one of those games where you cannot say you dislike it because so many people actually love it, that I would actually be surprised if that's the case. And like I keep saying, I think the PvP is really what sucks, and the replayability. And I think it's also overrated PvE wise, but that does not mean it's a bad game. Like I keep saying, I think this game is a solid like 8 out of 10. It's just that, you know, it's definitely not like a 10 as people make it out to be. But that being said, I think most games are 6 and below, so yes, it does stand out as a good game. You need over 9 out of 10 to retain. I don't think it's about that, Chirico. Like, you can have a really good story and bad player retention if there's just no content after you beat the game. You know, like I've explained this in the past, to me, like how I see it, the things that retain player activity is either multiplayer interaction, so we're talking PvP, we're talking co-op, you know, any multiplayer based stuff is something that's going to retain people, because you always get a different experience when you're playing with your friends, you're having fun, not just because of the game is just a pretext or context to have fun with your friends. So that's one. There's also the creative aspect to it, you know, games, there's a reason why games like Minecraft, games like Valheim got so popular, or I mean, there's the multiplayer element again there, but a lot of it is also very creatively driven. For the creative people out there, they love, I know because I'm one of these people, they love to create stuff in game, and there's an infinite amount of quote-unquote like replayability when you have like a creative activity like that you can keep coming back to, that lets you like express yourself, like building stuff, you know. If the player gives you like a good system to like make a home, decorate your home, that sort of stuff, you can spend a lot of time on that, so that's good replayability there. Another big replayability thing is people that like exploring. So when you take a game like Skyrim, even though like Elden Ring is a big game, I feel like Skyrim is a better example, because a game like Skyrim has a lot of different places, and it's going to take a very long time to actually like do everything in the game. And so people like really enjoy going through all these new areas and exploring everything. So that's another one that has like really good player retention. And to a new extent now, we're going to see more and more of that procedural stuff, and that's going to tie into the exploration as well. So these are the things I can think about on top of my head, but if a game doesn't have any of that stuff, like the player retention is not going to be as good. Like after that, there's the story, but story is not really related to player retention. Story is actually mostly related to the initial impression that people have of X or Y games. Like if a game has a good story, it's likely gonna have good a good PR. Like, people are gonna talk well about this game. From the little I've seen of Zelda, it does look like that creative aspect is there, and that might drive player retention, you know, stuff like that. And also, I don't know how big Zelda games are, but it could also tie into to the exploration that can carry like someone's playthrough for a long time. Okay, I'll let my teammate work. Now, you don't need to intervene in every fight. Should take some advice from Kojima. Kojima, really? What about Kojima that has his game be replayable? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Metal Gear games. Like, my first Metal Gear game was Metal Gear 4, Metal Gear Solid 4, and I went and I did not play all the other games afterward. I did not even finish 5. Actually, Metal Gear 4 is the only one I finished, but I went online and watched all the cutscenes for all the games. You know, just like if it was a movie, like an actual like TV show. That's how good like the story was. So I did not play like any of the other games, but I've watched all the story cutscenes on YouTube. And surprisingly, there's actually a bunch of vid that just, you know, they just show you all the story part because they know that the story is really good in these. Metal Gear Solid 3 is fire. Oh, I'm definitely playing that remake. I feel like the remake is going to be a perfect excuse to play Metal Gear 3 because, you know, it's not going to feel dated. I'm sure the gameplay holds up pretty well. I mean, these games were really good, PvE-wise. Actually, PvP-wise too. For those who've managed to play like Metal Gear Online, like, God, that PvP was ridiculously good in these games. It's such a shame that it didn't gather more attention because it was one of those like shooter game that's very different from anything that's out there, and that's like super skillful and good. Oh man, Metal Gear Online was like a gem in the rough that that's people don't know about. Crazy. Especially the Metal Gear Online that came with Metal Gear 4. That one was so good.